police officer with a prejudiced look pulls over a black woman trying to use his power to intimidate her. What he doesn't realize is that this woman is the chief of internal affairs. Case who holds his career in his hands. This story shows a conflicting tension between prejudice and justice that exposes the truth about abuse of power. Where are you viewing this story? Share your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting and meaningful stories. Together, we can spark conversations that lead to a better and more just society. Stay tuned as we dive into this gripping narrative of power, prejudice, and justice. Let's uncover how she's turned a moment of injustice into a turning point for accountability. The city of Sacramento shimmered under the soft hues of twilight, a canvas painted with shades of orange, pink, and lavender. The quiet hum of evening traffic filled the air as the city's residents began their journeys home, the streets alive, yet serene. Streetlights flickered to life, casting a warm glow on the asphalt as the sun dipped below the horizon. The rooms behind her offered the same glow too. Driving through this peaceful scene was Alicia Harper, a poised and successful black woman whose presence commanded respect. Behind the wheel of her sleek black sedan, Alicia exuded professionalism. Her tailored navy suit was a perfect fit, complemented by polished heels and a neatly styled braid that framed her confident expression. It had been a long day filled with meetings and decisions that shaped the future of her department. On the seat beside her, a neatly closed laptop rested, a testament to her commitment to excellence and the demands of her high-ranking role. As soft jazz played from the car's speakers, Alicia allowed herself a brief moment of calm. Her sharp mind, still buzzing with strategies and plans, began to quiet as the soothing rhythm filled the air. She was heading home, ready to unwind after another day of navigating the complexities of her position. The streets ahead seemed to stretch endlessly, a path of calm leading to the familiarity of her home. Alicia's demeanor remained composed, her focus steady. Little did she know, her tranquil evening would soon be disrupted by an encounter that would test her resilience and uncover a deeper truth about the systems she worked so hard to uphold. Sacramento's serenity was about to collide with the harsh reality of bias, and Alicia Harper was more than prepared to face it. As Alicia Harper's sedan approached an intersection, the traffic light shifted from yellow to red. She gently pressed the brakes, bringing the car to a smooth stop. The faint hum of jazz still filled the car, and Alicia's thoughts drifted to the comfort of home. Said Alicia. Then she noticed the sharp flicker of red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. The insistent blare of a siren followed, breaking the serene rhythm of her evening. Alicia frowned, perplexed by the sudden attention. She hadn't done anything wrong. Taking a steadying breath, she pulled over to the side of the road, her movements deliberate and calm. From the police cruiser emerged Officer Kevin Brooks, tall and imposing in his meticulously pressed uniform. His gait carried an air of authority, but his demeanor felt sharp and unwelcoming. Adjusting his belt, he approached Alicia's car with a swagger that spoke of someone used to wielding power without question. Alicia lowered her window, her composed expression masking the unease creeping into her thoughts. Kevin's voice was curt and firm, laced with something that felt unnervingly personal. "License and registration," he demanded, offering no explanation for the stop. Alicia studied him for a moment, her tone polite yet firm. "Is there a problem, officer?" Kevin's eyes narrowed as he leaned closer. "We'll talk about that after you hand over your license and registration." With deliberate calm, Alicia opened her glove compartment and retrieved the documents. Her hands remained steady despite the weight of his scrutinizing gaze. Kevin took them, his eyes lingering on her face before shifting to the information on her license. "You ran a yellow light," he finally said, his voice steady but devoid of impartiality. Alicia tilted her head slightly, her tone measured. "I stopped as the light turned red, officer. If there's been a misunderstanding, I'm happy to clarify." Kevin let out a quiet scoff, his gaze moving from her tailored suit to her sleek black sedan. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked abruptly, his tone more like a challenge than a question. Instantly, he turned into a... Alicia met his gaze directly. "My address is on my license," she replied evenly. Kevin didn't seem interested in her answer. "An address is one thing," he said, his voice turning dry. but my instincts tell me something else. Why were you in such a hurry to get through that intersection?" Alicia's composure didn't falter. "I wasn't in a hurry," she replied, her voice firm, yet calm. "I was driving home." Kevin smirked, a fleeting expression that carried no warmth. "Home? Huh? Where's home?" "It's on my license," Alicia responded, her patience thinning but her professionalism intact. The interaction, meant to be a simple exchange, was unraveling into something else. Kevin's questions veered further from the reason for the stop, transforming the encounter into an interrogation, not of her driving, but of her identity. "Where do you work?" he pressed. Alicia's pulse quickened. This wasn't about a traffic violation anymore. It was a thinly veiled exercise in power. She steadied her voice. "Is that relevant to a traffic stop?" Kevin's expression hardened. "You know, people like you often hide a lot," he said, his words carrying an unmistakable weight. Alicia felt the meaning behind his words, the prejudice lurking beneath his professional facade. She drew a deep breath, her calm demeanor now laced with resolve. "Well, officer," she said, her tone unwavering, "I hope your curiosity doesn't delay me too long on my way home." Kevin chuckled, but the sound was devoid of humor. He was pushing boundaries, searching for a reason to prolong the encounter, to reassert his control. The routine traffic stop had shifted into a clear abuse of power, and Alicia knew she was walking a fine line. Despite his attempts to intimidate, Alicia's unwavering composure revealed a quiet strength that Kevin hadn't anticipated. And soon he would realize that this was no ordinary encounter. This was a reckoning he wasn't prepared for. Alicia Harper remained seated in her car, her calm exterior masking the growing tension she felt. Officer Kevin Brooks stood by her window, his body language radiating authority. His probing questions had already crossed professional boundaries, yet Alicia's demeanor remained steady. "Where do you work?" Kevin pressed again, his tone sharper this time. Alicia met his gaze, her voice firm but calm. "Officer, I've complied with your requests, but your questions seem unrelated to the reason you pulled me over. Could you clarify why this line of questioning is necessary?" Kevin scoffed, shifting his weight and adjusting his belt. "Necessary? It's standard procedure. You never know who you're dealing with these days." His voice carried a sarcastic edge, as though mocking her attempt to question his authority. "Standard procedure?" Alicia echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Searching for answers that have nothing to do with a traffic stop doesn't feel standard, officer." Kevin leaned closer, his posture intimidating. "Are you arguing with me? That's not a smart way to handle this." Alicia held her ground, her voice steady but resolute. "I'm not arguing, officer. I'm simply pointing out that your behavior seems unnecessary." Kevin smirked, but his eyes betrayed frustration. "People like you always think you're above the law." The words landed heavily, but Alicia refused to flinch. "People like me?" she repeated, her tone measured. "And what exactly do you mean by that?" Kevin hesitated for a moment, realizing his misstep, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. "You know what I mean," he said, his voice laced with hostility. Alicia tilted her head slightly, her calm gaze unwavering. "No, officer, I don't. Perhaps you could explain?" The tension thickened, and for a moment, it seemed as though Kevin might lose his composure entirely. His grip on his belt tightened, and he took a step back, as though searching for a new angle of control. "You seem awfully confident," Kevin said, his voice low and laced with challenge. "Maybe you've done this before." Alicia sighed softly, a trace of disappointment crossing her face. She had hoped the situation wouldn't escalate to this point, but Kevin's behavior left her little choice. Slowly, she reached into her jacket pocket, her movements deliberate. "Don't move," Kevin barked, his hand instinctively moving toward his holster. Alicia froze, her voice calm yet commanding. "Officer, I'm retrieving something important. I suggest you stand down." Kevin hesitated, his confusion briefly overpowering his aggression. Alicia carefully pulled out her badge and held it up for him to see. "Chief of Internal Affairs, Sacramento Police Department," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Kevin's expression shifted in an instant. The smug confidence drained from his face, replaced by a mix of shock, disbelief, and growing panic. He stared at the badge as though it had completely dismantled his world. "What?" he stammered, his voice stripped of authority. Alicia lowered the badge but didn't back down. Her gaze remained steady, her tone unyielding. "I've been fully cooperative, officer. Yet, your actions tonight have gone far beyond the boundaries of a routine traffic stop. Care to explain?" Kevin opened his mouth, but no words came out. His mind raced as he tried to piece together a response, but nothing could justify the blatant prejudice and abuse of power he had displayed. I didn't know," Kevin muttered, his voice weak. "That's obvious," Alicia replied sharply, "and it's also irrelevant. What matters is that you allowed your own biases to dictate your actions tonight. This isn't just about me, it's about the principles you swore to uphold." Kevin's gaze dropped to the ground, his hands hanging limply at his sides. The realization of the gravity of his actions hit him like a tidal wave, and his once confident demeanor crumbled. "You think you were just doing your job," Alicia continued, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "But the truth is, you let prejudice cloud your judgment. That's not just a personal failing, it's a failure of the system." Kevin stood in silence, his face pale, as Alicia delivered her words with unwavering authority. "This isn't over," she said, her tone firm. "Your actions tonight will have consequences not just for you, but as part of a larger investigation into the culture of this department." Alicia stepped back toward her car, her composure intact despite the emotional weight of the confrontation. Kevin, now stripped of his authority, could only watch as she drove away. The turning point had come, and the power dynamics had shifted irrevocably. Alicia Harper had not only stood her ground, but also delivered a clear message. Justice and accountability would prevail, no matter the cost. After the encounter, Alicia Harper drove home in silence, the weight of the evening settling over her. The confrontation with Officer Kevin Brooks wasn't just a personal affront. It was a glaring symptom of deeper, systemic issues she had spent years working to address. But Alicia knew this wasn't the time to reflect on the past. It was time to act decisively. Once home, she wasted no time. Alicia meticulously documented every detail of the traffic stop. From Kevin's initial tone and behavior to the specific questions he asked and his thinly veiled prejudices, she outlined it all. The documentation wasn't just for personal reference, it would serve as evidence to expose the broader problem of bias within the department. The next morning, Alicia arrived early at the Sacramento Police Department. She carried with her a file containing not only the account of her own encounter, but also complaints and reports of similar incidents involving Kevin and other officers. These weren't isolated cases. They painted a disturbing picture of a culture that enabled misconduct and allowed biases to go unchecked. Her first stop was the office of Police Chief Edward Thompson, a seasoned officer with decades of experience. Thompson had always maintained a reputation for integrity, but Alicia knew this meeting would test his resolve. Thompson looked up as she entered, his sharp eyes scanning the stack of documents in her hands. "Morning, Alicia," he said, his tone cautious. "What brings you in so early?" Alicia placed the file on his desk and met his gaze with unwavering determination. "Chief, we have a problem. Last night, I had an encounter with Officer Kevin Brooks that went far beyond a routine traffic stop. His behavior wasn't just unprofessional, it was fueled by prejudice. And he's not the only one." Thompson leaned back in his chair, his expression growing serious. "Go on," he said. Alicia outlined the incident, her tone measured but firm. She then turned to the reports in the file, highlighting patterns of similar misconduct. "This isn't just about one officer," she said. "It's about a culture that tolerates this behavior. If we don't address it now, we're not just failing as a department, we're failing the community we serve." Thompson nodded slowly, his face betraying the weight of the revelation. "You're asking for more than discipline for Brooks," he said. "You're asking for systemic reform." "Yes," Alicia replied. "We need a comprehensive investigation into officer conduct, our training protocols, and how we address complaints of misconduct. This can't be a quick fix. It has to be a complete overhaul." Thompson exhaled deeply, clearly conflicted. "You realize the kind of resistance this will face, both internally and externally. Veteran officers will see this as an attack, and public scrutiny will only increase. I do, Alicia said, but the alternative is worse. If we ignore this, we erode trust in law enforcement and fail the people we swore to protect. The chief remained silent for a moment, then gave a reluctant nod. You have my support, but know this, Alicia, it won't be easy. He wasn't wrong. The push for reform was met with immediate resistance. Within the department, veteran officers began circulating petitions accusing Alicia of undermining morale and being overly harsh. Rumors spread, and some colleagues openly questioned her motives. Externally, public opinion was divided. Advocacy groups praised Alicia's bravery, while more conservative factions accused her of weakening law enforcement. The media picked up on the controversy, amplifying the pressure on the department and on Alicia personally. But Alicia refused to back down. She held a series of internal meetings to address the resistance head-on, emphasizing that the reforms weren't about punishing officers, but about building a fair and transparent system. Accountability isn't the enemy of law enforcement, she told her colleagues. It's the foundation of trust. She also reached out to community leaders, organizing forums to hear their concerns and share her vision for reform. At one event, an elderly man recounted his own encounter with misconduct, his voice trembling with emotion. I never thought I'd see someone in your position fighting for us, he said. Moments like these reinforced Alicia's resolve. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but every step brought her closer to a system that truly served the community. Her efforts culminated in a department-wide hearing where Kevin Brooks faced an internal review. Alicia presented the evidence against him, her voice steady and her arguments unflinching. After hours of deliberation, the panel voted to suspend Brooks indefinitely and require comprehensive retraining. While some saw this as a victory, Alicia knew it was just the beginning. The fight for systemic reform would take time, but with each step she moved closer to her goal, a fair and just department that upheld the values it claimed to represent. As Alicia left the office that evening, she glanced at the city skyline, her resolve unshaken. This wasn't just about one officer or one incident. It was about creating lasting change, and Alicia Harper was determined to see it through. Alicia looked at her watch and waved Alicia to approach time. Alicia took a deep breath and reached out. The departmental hearing regarding Officer Kevin Brooks was held in a stark, formal conference room within the Sacramento Police Department. The walls, adorned with official seals and framed photos of past chiefs, provided a backdrop of institutional gravity. At the center of the room sat a large wooden table, its surface polished to a reflective shine. Around it were members of the disciplinary panel, senior officers, and investigative staff. At one end sat Kevin, his back straight but his face betraying tension. Across from him sat Alicia Harper, composed and resolute, her presence commanding the room. As the hearing began, Kevin's attorney opened with a defense aimed at minimizing his actions. They argued that the traffic stop was routine, and any misunderstanding stemmed from standard procedural caution. Kevin himself spoke in a tone markedly different from the one Alicia had encountered during their interaction. I admit I might have come across as assertive, he said, avoiding her gaze, but I was doing my job, and in a high-stress position, misinterpretations can happen. Alicia listened silently, her expression unreadable. When her turn to speak came, she stood, her voice steady and unyielding. This isn't about a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation, she began. This is about an officer abusing his authority, driven by personal biases that have no place in law enforcement. She recounted the events of the traffic stop in meticulous detail, pointing out Kevin's unwarranted scrutiny, his prejudiced remarks, and the power imbalance he exploited. This was not an isolated incident, Alicia continued, presenting additional complaints and reports against Kevin's conduct. This pattern of behavior undermines the very trust our community places in us. Her words were clear and uncompromising, and the weight of her evidence was undeniable. Kevin shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the confidence he had projected the night of the traffic stop nowhere to be seen. After hours of deliberation, the panel announced its decision. Kevin Brooks was to be suspended indefinitely and required to undergo comprehensive retraining before any possibility of reinstatement. The room fell silent as the verdict was delivered. For Kevin, The decision was a stark fall from authority. For Alicia, it was a small but significant step toward accountability. However, the repercussions of the hearing extended far beyond Kevin's suspension. Within the department, veteran officers quickly organized a petition opposing the disciplinary actions. The petition accused Alicia of being overly harsh and divisive, suggesting her push for reform was harming morale. Some colleagues voiced their support for Kevin, arguing that he was being unfairly targeted. The division within the department was palpable, with some officers openly criticizing Alicia's leadership. Rumors spread that her actions were a personal vendetta rather than a pursuit of justice. Alicia faced this internal resistance head-on, holding meetings to address concerns and emphasized that accountability was not about punishment but about upholding the integrity of the department. Outside the department, the reaction was markedly different. Community members and advocacy groups rallied behind Alicia, praising her transparency and determination to address systemic issues. At a public forum, a local resident spoke passionately about how Alicia's actions had restored some of their faith in law enforcement. "For too long we felt like no one was listening," they said, "but now we see someone standing up for what's right." Media coverage of the hearing further amplified the story, drawing national attention. While some conservative voices criticized Alicia's actions as weakening law enforcement, many others applauded her for addressing the critical issues of bias and abuse of power. Alicia, undeterred by the mixed reactions, remained focused on the bigger picture. In a press conference following the hearing, she addressed the public directly. "This is not about one officer," she said firmly. "This is about ensuring that every member of this department serves with integrity, fairness, and respect for the community we're sworn to protect. Accountability is not the enemy of law enforcement, it is its foundation." The hearing and its aftermath marked a turning point not just for Kevin Brooks, but for the department as a whole. Alicia knew the road ahead would be difficult, with resistance from both inside and outside the force. But the overwhelming community support reaffirmed her belief that transparency and justice were worth fighting for. As Alicia left the hearing room that day, her resolve was unshaken. This was only the beginning of her mission to reform the system, a mission she was determined to see through, no matter the challenges that lay ahead. Alicia Harper's actions during and after the hearing sent ripples through Sacramento, sparking a transformation that many had longed for but thought impossible. Her determination to address misconduct and biases within the department began to restore trust in law enforcement, one step at a time. In the weeks following Officer Kevin Brooks's suspension, the Sacramento Police Department announced sweeping changes to its policies. Training programs were revamped to include implicit bias awareness and de-escalation techniques, ensuring officers were better equipped to serve all members of the community with fairness and respect. A new accountability system was also introduced, allowing for more transparent investigations into complaints of misconduct. These reforms didn't just happen behind closed doors. Alicia made it a priority to involve the community in the process. She worked closely with local leaders and advocacy groups, holding town halls and forums where residents could voice their concerns and offer suggestions. These open dialogues created a bridge between the police and the people they served, fostering a sense of collaboration and shared purpose. One of the most significant moments came during a community event held at the Sacramento Civic Center. The large hall was filled with residents of all ages, backgrounds, and professions, united by their hope for meaningful change. Alicia took to the stage, her presence commanding yet approachable. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice steady and filled with conviction. "The events of the past few weeks have shown us not only the challenges we face, but also the opportunities we have to build something better." She paused, scanning the crowd before continuing. "Justice isn't just about holding individuals accountable. It's about creating a system that values fairness, transparency, and equality. That's the commitment I've made, not just as a leader in this department, but as a member of this community." Her words resonated deeply with the audience. Alicia spoke about the importance of trust and the role everyone plays in fostering it. "We cannot undo the mistakes of the past," she said, "but we can learn from them. Together, we can build a future where everyone feels safe and respected, regardless of who they are or where they come from." The room erupted in applause as Alicia stepped down from the podium. It wasn't just a moment of celebration, it was a collective affirmation of her vision for a better future. The reforms initiated by Alicia Harper marked the beginning of a cultural shift in Sacramento. While challenges remained, the community had taken its first steps toward healing, led by a woman who refused to accept injustice as the norm. Her actions proved that one person's courage could ignite change and inspire hope for generations to come. Alicia Harper's journey was more than a confrontation with one prejudiced officer. It was a battle against systemic injustice. Through courage, composure, and unwavering determination, she turned a routine traffic stop into a catalyst for meaningful change. Her actions not only held Officer Kevin Brooks accountable, but also sparked reforms within the Sacramento Police Department, laying the foundation for a more fair and transparent system. This story teaches us powerful lessons: that standing up to injustice, even in the face of resistance, is essential for progress. Alicia's efforts remind us that real change doesn't happen overnight. It requires persistence, collaboration, and a commitment to doing what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. But this isn't just Alicia's story. It's a call to action for all of us. In our own lives, we might encounter moments where standing up for justice feels daunting. How would you handle such situations? Would you stay silent, or use your voice to challenge what's wrong? We love to hear your thoughts. If you've ever witnessed or experienced injustice, share your story in the comments. Let's spark a conversation that inspires others to act with courage and integrity. If Alicia's story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more meaningful stories like this one. Together, we can shed light on the issues that matter, spark vital conversations, and work toward building a better and more just society. Thank you for watching, and remember, change begins with us. Let's continue to stand for what's right and inspire the world around us. See you in the next story.